So as we've seen from the last two sections, 9.1 and 9.2, life really flourished on our planet. And in the last section, 9.3, now that we have all this life, how do we classify it? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the traditional Linnaean classification, which uses two words to define a species. And that's why it's called binomial, bi for two, nomen means name, binomial nomenclature, to define a species. But then later we used we define classification through phylogenetic processes, and that shows the evolutionary relationships between living things. So we'll see both of those in this section. So for the last couple thousand years, humans have been trying to classify the great diversity of life, and the name of the science that does that is called taxonomy. Classification is an important step in understanding the present diversity. That means the wide variety of life that we have on the planet and the past evolutionary history of the Earth. All modern classifications have their roots in the Linnaean classification system, which was designed by a Swedish botanist, Carolus Linnaeus, in the 1700s. Please read about that. And you guys probably know this. Let's start at the bottom. So the kingdom of animals in this system, this is a classification of human species. This chart shows the taxa, that's the classification, and each taxon is a subdivision. So let's go with the largest, which is kingdom, animals. Then we go to chordates, which are animals that have a backbone. That's the phyla. The phyla is chordate. The class is mammals. These are chordates with fur or hair and milk glands. The order are primates, mammals with collarbones and grasping fingers. The family, we are in the family of hominids. These are primates with relatively flat faces and three-dimensional vision. And the genus is Homo. These we have an upright posture and large brains, and our species is Sapiens. So that is how the Linnaean system would classify us. Perhaps the single greatest contribution that Linnaeus made was his method of naming, and we've talked a little bit about that. So take a look at this, read it, and we're going to now take a look at the phylogenetic tree. And a phylogenetic tree is a way of showing relationships over time, so kind of the evolution over time. We have three huge ways to divide all life on the planet. And one of the ways is to divide all life into three domains. So there's the domain of bacteria, the domain of archaea, and the domain of eukarya. So you can see where we are. We're in eukarya over here, and we are right here, animals. And this is a very generalized tree. We'll see a little more specifically coming up an example. So for example, Linnaeus classified organisms based on their physical traits, but after Darwin published his theory of evolution through natural selection in the late 1800s, scientists looked for a way to classify them that would show phylogeny. And phylogeny is the evolutionary history of a group of related organisms. For example, if I have species 1 and species 2 here, this tree branch has a common point where they diverge, where they move in separate direction. This would be a common ancestor of species 1 and species 2. Shows how three hypothetical species, these 1, 2, and 3, well, if we were to go back in time even more, there would be a common ancestor here of all three, of species 3, 2, and 1. Which species are more closely related? Species 1 and 2, because they share a more recent common ancestor. This is referred to as a phylogenetic tree. Sometimes it's called a cladogram. Let's take a look at one of those. So here is a cladogram that shows mammals. So we have mammals. Now this is present time. These are all animals that exist now. As we go down here, we go further back in time. And if you'll note, there's a common ancestor here for both mammals and reptiles. There's a common ancestor here between turtles and lizards and snakes. There's a common ancestor here for crocodiles and lizards and snakes. So as we go down in this cladogram, this phylogenetic tree, we are going back in time. So make sure you read the lesson summary, and we will look forward to explaining more about evolution and the evidence for evolution in Chapter 10, which is coming up. Remember, please read and study all of Chapter 9. Take notes on it. Watch the animation that we had on the Miller-Urey a couple times if that's new information to you, and good luck on the quiz.